this methodology that I created is really how we kind of go beyond what we're hearing a lot now, which is like trauma-informed breath work, which to me is just understanding that breath work can bring up trauma, understanding how to hold space for people who have trauma and not re-traumatizing them. So it's more like an awareness or an ability to hold a safe space, which is great, but we want to take it a step further, which is what the solution that I've created does, and turn it into a tool for healing trauma. It's really about going beyond trauma-informed to trauma healing and dissolving trauma and creating a real, tangible change. Welcome to Reclaiming Consciousness. I'm Elise Bassine, trauma and breathwork expert and creator of the Metamorphosis Method, the only methodology bridging the gap between spiritual healing and clinical trauma work. For many years, our consciousness has been hijacked by societal and cultural programming, religion, the media, and familial and ancestral trauma. In this podcast, you'll discover my unique perspective on trauma healing and how it is the gateway to fully reclaiming your consciousness. You'll hear stories and teachings that expand your mind as you discover how every relationship challenge, business block, or limiting pattern is an invitation to reclaim the parts of your consciousness you unknowingly gave away. Get ready to go deep. Now let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. So I'm really excited because I have a solo episode for you this week, and I'm going to be talking about my breathwork methodology and how to use breathwork to heal and dissolve trauma. And I wanted to really go deep into this because I'm going to be doing a masterclass on November 11th where I'm going to go really deep into how to utilize breathwork for its full power and use it as a heal to permanently dissolve core wounds and permanently dissolve the trauma from childhood that blocks you from creating what you desire in your life now. And, I'm just coming off of this retreat with Bliss, my friend Steph, who you've heard on the podcast. We were up in the Catskills this weekend. It was gorgeous. It was like peak fall foliage, and we were at this beautiful location. And it just really, I don't even know if I quite have words. I love teaching in person, and I love watching the acceleration that happens when I teach my methodology and my breathwork with people in person. It just has this really powerful accelerating effect. I've been really thinking about the in-person stuff versus online. And I think they both are so important because, obviously most of the work I do is online, and it really allows us to go deep and get support over time and do it in a way that is really efficient and, works for my schedule, works for your schedule, and still feels super supportive, and you have a place to really plug into, not only when you need support, but also to be able to implement the tools in real time so that you can get a tangible result. And I think that way of working online is so important, and also obviously allows me to support all of you no matter where you are on the planet, which is such a huge gift. However, I do think the in-person experience combined with the online experience just really accelerates the process. It's almost like a rocket fuel, when we get in person, especially if we've already worked together online. It's just like we come together and it's just like, boom, we take off, and it's like taking all of that stuff that we've done online and then just the in-person, the energy and the power of all of our auras coming together. It's like nothing else. And, I had a few women say to me over the weekend when we went through the inner child healing process and I helped 14 women pinpoint their core wounds and process them. And then we did the breath work. I had a couple women say to me, no one else is doing this, not like you are. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and just my process, the Metamorphosis Method, and what makes it so unique. And I think that one of the biggest things is the use of the breath work to heal trauma. And I think that especially in the last, 5 to 10 years, there's been so much growth in the world of breath work. We see so many people having their own breathwork certifications and using breathwork with their clients and practicing breathwork to create change. But, I think one of the things that I realized over time, and, this is in 25 years of having breathwork be a huge part of my life, is that breathwork really has the power to bring up childhood wounding. And it's great. However, I don't think that a lot of practitioners and a lot of people out there using breathwork fully understand that. And that's like no shade to anybody at all. However, I think that sometimes the power of what really could happen with breathwork is missed because a lot of people don't have the skill set to be able to take what's coming up and use the tools and have the skill set to walk somebody through that trauma so that they can dissolve it to create a real tangible result. And after being in this healing space for, more than half of my life at this point, I'm going to be 44 in a couple of weeks. And I have been at the whole breathwork thing and healing thing since I was 19. I think one of the biggest things that I would look at over time is like watching people continue to do healing work and work on themselves and being like, wow, they're doing all this work, but why are they kind of still seeming like they're in relatively the same space, kind of struggling with the same things or repeating the same patterns, even after doing all of this work? And I really sat with that for such a long time because I wanted to create a solution for that, because I'm like, wait, we're doing all this healing work. Like, why are certain people not getting results or not growing in the way they really want to, or not able to fully dissolve long-standing patterns or issues? And while I definitely wholeheartedly believe that the process of personal growth and healing is a lifelong process, I do believe that. However, I also wholeheartedly believe that it's possible to create permanent and tangible results in your life relatively quickly. And so that in combination with also, working in the schools for a decade or more than a decade, but as a school counselor for a decade, I'd also kind of look at like the mental health arena and just kind of like the traditional perspectives on mental health, the traditional ways that we look at children and behavior. And, I'd always be just kind of stepping back and looking at it and being like, none of this shit makes sense. Like the way that we're approaching children and their mental health and their behavior and the way that they show up in school is like totally backwards because everybody was just focusing on symptoms, right? Everyone was just focusing on, okay, how do we get them to change their behavior? Or how do we get them to be able to focus in school? And it's like, in order to really be able to create changes in some of those areas, we have to be able to look at like, why is this kid behaving this way, right? And I'm sure you guys have heard me say this before, but when it comes to any behavior, and this isn't just with children, it's with adults too, it's not the behavior itself that's the problem. It's the reason why we're doing the behavior, right? And I always say with kids that their behavior is sending us a message. And until we receive that message, it doesn't matter how many behavior charts we put them on or how much we incentivize it. It might work for a little while, but ultimately that behavior is going to come back because we haven't addressed the root cause of the behavior. And we also haven't received the message that this child is trying to give us, and as children, we don't have the ability to express our experience or what we need all the time in the way that we really would be able to get the message across to an adult, right? And a lot of times adults don't have the capacity to receive the message because they're dealing with their own trauma, So a lot of times as kids, we behave in a way that we are attempting to send a message to get our needs met, right? So I'll give you an example of this. I notice it a lot with my daughter, Hazel. She's 9. She's in 4th grade. And when she has homework at night, one of the things that'll happen is we'll start doing her homework, right? And she'll do some of it. And then once we get to something that requires just a little more of her and requires kind of multiple steps of thinking, or if, we finish one thing and then she has something else to do, like reading or something like that, and she just hits a wall, and she won't be able to say, I'm hitting a wall, or I'm tired, or I'm frustrated, or I don't want to do this anymore. She'll just start crying, and she'll kind of throw herself on the floor. She'll roll around on the couch. And I'll be like, do you want me to help you with this? Do you want me to do this? I'll kind of provide solutions, and everything I say, she'll be like, no, no, no. And I can tell that she feels frustrated. She feels overwhelmed. She probably also feels like, I've been in school the entire day and I don't feel like doing homework. I just want to relax. I just want to play. I just want to have fun. I want to wind down. I want to decompress. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have any more capacity for this, But she doesn't have those words. And especially when it comes to emotions, kids largely, they need context and they need help and support in making sense of what their emotional experience is, So a lot of times I'll say to her, it feels to me like you are frustrated because you're tired of doing work and you really don't want to do it anymore. Is that true? She'll be like, yeah. And sometimes I'll even just, I'll validate her and be like, yeah, I know you were just in school the whole day. I totally understand why you wouldn't want to do this anymore. And then it's funny too, because last night she was she had to do 20 minutes of reading. And that was when she kind of had this meltdown. And I said to her that I would read the book to her. I don't always do that because obviously she's supposed to read it herself, but I could see she was really struggling. And I also think that it is a nice time to just bond and connect with each other when I read to her. And it was something that my mom always did with me that I felt was really special. And regardless of anything else going on, it was really nice to have that attention and to connect with her in that way. So I offered to do that with her. And at first she said, no, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's your decision. I'm not going to force you. If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. And she's like, so I don't have to do it? And I was like, you are supposed to do it. Your teacher said you should do it. It's your choice. And she's like, do you think I should do it? And I was like, yeah, I think you should do it. But again, it's your choice. And then it was funny because I think she was looking for me to tell her that I didn't think she had to do it. But I wasn't going to say that because I wanted to be honest with her. But I also wanted to give her the opportunity to choose and show her that I trust in her ability to choose and make those decisions, right? And again, I'm just sharing this as something that I am working with or being curious about. I'm not saying this is the right way to handle it or that I know everything about parenting because I don't claim to. However, I just really try to do things in a way that allows her to feel seen and heard and acknowledged in what her experience is, right? And again, I'm not attached to the whole homework thing either. If she really doesn't want to do it, I'm not going to force her and have an argument or whatever. I don't see the point in that. And then also I think it's important for kids to have the experience of okay, well, I didn't do it. And then, I went to school and then I had the experience of whatever happens when you don't do it, whatever that is. And then they can make that decision from there. But anyway, so after I said, you can make the decision, but I'm not going to tell you don't have to do it. And then she's like, okay, will you read to me? So we kind of went through this whole thing where my only goal was to just acknowledge and validate her feelings, and then just give her context so that she could make sense of her experience. And my whole reason for sharing this is that that behavior that she was doing was trying to send me a message, right? That she was at capacity, that she was frustrated. But if I would have just said, no, stop, you need to do this, and kind of like force her to change her behavior, it probably would have ended in more of a fight and more of a meltdown. And I say this to illustrate a point that if we don't get to the bottom of why a behavior is happening, then forcing ourselves to change a behavior, it doesn't work. You know, it might work for a little bit, but it's not going to fully land, and we're not going to get the results that we want because we haven't addressed why that behavior is happening. And it's the same thing in adulthood with things like any kind of longstanding pattern, any kind of like addiction or coping mechanism. Like I always give the example of people pleasing or trying to overly exert control over situations or avoiding conflict or not saying how you really feel. Any of those behaviors, I know a lot of clients that come to me, they have a lot of awareness around the fact that they're doing them, but they are like, why can't I stop? I know that I'm doing this, but even if I say I'm not going to do it, I still do it, or I try not to do it, but then I still end up doing it. And it's the exact reason because you haven't yet addressed the reason why you're doing it. And largely any of those behaviors like people pleasing or avoiding conflict or not saying what you want or how you feel, all of those things are coping mechanisms that we created in childhood in order to survive. And if we don't address the reason why we created that coping mechanism in the first place and what was the unmet need that made us decide that we had to be this way in order to get our needs met, and what is the emotion behind the fact that we did not get that need met, then ultimately we're not going to be able to change the behavior, right? So what I've come up with over time in teaching and sharing and practicing breath work for 25 years is that the breath work has the power to bring up those unconscious suppressed emotions and unmet needs from childhood. It's just a matter of knowing what to do with those feelings and those emotions so that you can address them, dissolve them, and create a permanent change in these long-standing patterns. So when I was over time just looking at, well, why don't people get results and why are kids not actually changing when we're trying to change their behaviors in school? Like, what is the missing piece here? And what I realized is the missing piece is addressing the core wound or the root cause of why these things are happening. And largely that stuff was not being addressed in either of those spaces in a really intentional and tangible way. You know, we might skirt around it or we might process a million different things that have happened in childhood, but largely that doesn't necessarily get us anywhere unless we're able to direct the energy towards this is why this happened. This is how I'm recreating this unmet need in all areas of my life, and it might show up different in different areas. And this is how the breath work allows me to access it. And now I'm going to use very specific tools to address it so I can create a permanent change. And that is really my goal, intention, and what I've created with the metamorphosis method and the inner child healing process. I'm sure most of you have heard the episode that I did with Sage, where she talked about her experience in the metamorphosis method certification. But one of the things she shared is that, you know, she had been through another breathwork certification and she learned how to facilitate breathwork. But one of the things she was really struggling with is, you know, she would have private clients and she would lead groups, but then she felt like she didn't know where to go from there, right? Like it was like people had an experience in the breath work. They felt like they moved energy. They felt like they kind of, you know, understood certain things, but then it was like, what do you do with that information? Where do you take them from there? And that was the skill set that she felt like was missing, and also what was kind of holding her back from moving forward in her business too, because she felt like she didn't know how to take people on a real journey to transformation with the breath work. And that's what she learned in my certification, right? In the metamorphosis method. So the whole point of this is how we can utilize breath work to create a permanent, tangible result by dissolving the trauma from childhood that breath work has the power to bring up. And why the breath work piece is so important is because it's such a direct line of energy to the subconscious. And instead of just talking about things, because a lot of the stuff that's impacting us from childhood is in the subconscious. We're not consciously aware of it. And, there's levels of consciousness, right? Like I noticed in my own process that as I continue to heal and grow, there are ways that I was conscious of certain patterns that I had, but as I heal and grow, I become more and more conscious of them, and I'm able to articulate them much more clearly and shift them. So, sometimes we're sort of conscious of things that we're doing or the ways our childhood has impacted us, but a lot of it is still kind of below that line in the subconscious where we don't fully have access to it and we can't fully articulate it. And then on top of that, the suppressed emotions that are associated with it make it even harder to access, because when we shut the door on our emotions, we largely then will shut the door on our ability to access these parts of ourselves, and largely at the same time, our ability to access our intuition, inner knowing, inner guidance, and just the whole of the power that we have as a human, So when you use the breath work, what happens immediately is that you start to process and release the suppressed emotional energy that's just sitting in your body. Because anytime we have an emotional experience that's too overwhelming for us to process, which is a lot of our experience as kids, because we just don't have the capacity to process a lot of the bigger emotions and a lot of the situations and circumstances that just felt too overwhelming to us to process, we will just suppress it. And then that emotional energy does not go anywhere. It sits in your body and it starts to run in your body as patterns of energy that then cause, things like anxiety, worry, fear, depression, self-doubt, indecision, procrastination, all of these things, right? So when you use the breath work, you immediately start to process and release that emotional energy. And at the same time, you drop into the subconscious, and those patterns and beliefs from childhood, the wounding from childhood, the unmet needs will start to rise into the conscious mind. And at that point, there's like a crux there. There's an edge. There's an inflection point where that is now in the conscious mind. And now you have the ability to shift it if you have the tools and the skill set and the support. And that is what I give people in my programs and what I teach people to do in my certification is to meet someone at that inflection point and then powerfully give them the tools and the support and the space to dissolve that trauma that came up, that unmet need that came up, that suppressed emotion that comes up, to create a tangible change. So, having said all that, this methodology that I created is really, how we kind of go beyond, what we're hearing a lot now, which is like trauma-informed breath work, which to me is just understanding that breath work can bring up trauma, understanding how to hold space for people who have trauma and not re-traumatizing them, right? So it's more like an awareness or an ability to hold a safe space, which is great, but we want to take it a step further, which is what the solution that I've created does, and turn it into a tool for healing trauma. So, it's really about going beyond trauma-informed to trauma healing and dissolving trauma and creating a real tangible change, and the women who I've been working with for a long time who've really mastered this have created these real tangible changes in their lives, in their businesses, with their incomes, in their relationships. Like it's all different now. And it's because of this. It's because of the breath work and because of the tools that I've created in the metamorphosis method. I'm going to be teaching this masterclass on November 11th. If this is something that you want to really go deeper into understanding, and whether or not you're familiar with breath work or not, it might be something that you're like, I know that I need to do it and I've been feeling called to it, but I just don't know where to start. Or you've done it before and you know it was powerful, but you're like, well, how do I really use this to create what I want in my life? Or if you're a practitioner and you already use breath work or you want to, this is for you, because I'm going to go really deep into how we can utilize breath work to meet someone at that inflection point and create real tangible change with them in their lives and really take them on a journey to creating change, in a very tangible way. And that's the thing that I feel so passionately about, is helping people to not only create that tangible change, but also be able to do it on their own. One of the things I noticed early on in the healing spaces is this over reliance on, okay, well, I need to go to a healer, or I need to do a plant medicine ceremony, or I need to go to this or that or whatever. And it's always something outside yourself that you need to do in order to feel better. And the inner child healing process is the solution to that, because it's like, where the rubber meets the road in creating a real change is you being able to do the work within yourself, because you need to be able to meet the moment with awareness of what is actually happening, why you're triggered, why your inner child is triggered, and being able to address that in the moment and having that as a practice, so that over time, you create a different operating system in your own body, and you're not relying on somebody else to make you feel better. And then, a week later, you need to go back so they make you feel better. Like, that's not sustainable. The way we create real tangible change is through you applying the tools in each moment in your life so that you start operating completely differently. And that's really the goal here. And that's really what I wanted to create for people, and kind of like bridge this gap between doing the work and getting the result, and giving people a very tangible way that they can bring awareness to these things and create a shift around it. So it's not ambiguous, and it doesn't feel like it's kind of this abstract thing. It's actually real and tangible and makes sense to your logical brain. So if you want to learn more about how you can do this for yourself and how you can do this with your clients, and the real power of breath work that I've discovered over the last 25 years, and what's really possible with this tool, and how you can create results quickly, then I want to invite you to join me on November 11th at 4 p.m. I'm going to be hosting a 90-minute experience where I'm going to go really deep into it. You're going to get to experience some of it on your own, so you can really feel and know what I'm talking about, so that you can apply these concepts for yourself and your clients. Because I know if you work with clients, I know you want to be able to get the results that they want quickly, because then they're happy, they refer people to you, you're happy. And, I've heard so many people who come into my certification say that they really felt like there was something missing in the work they were doing with clients. Like they weren't able to get to the deeper reason why their client was having a struggle, or they weren't able to help them create a permanent result. Like maybe they would shift for a little, but then they'd inevitably go back to the same pattern. And like, what was the missing link there? And then when they came into the certification, they were like, oh, this is what it was. And now they're able to really take their clients on that journey to that permanent transformation and feel confident that they're able to see the root of why their clients are having the struggles that they are. And it can be applied to anything that you do with clients. If you work with clients in any capacity to create any kind of change, then this is so important because it helps you really get to the origination point of why they're struggling in the way that they are and understand it in a really deep but simple way. So I'm really excited for this class on the 11th. I'm going to drop the link below so you guys can sign up. It's $55. And you're going to leave with some real tangible things that you can apply immediately to your own process and working with your clients. So please reach out to me if you have any questions about this. And obviously, you can just click the link below and sign up, but I'm happy to answer any questions. You can send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram. And then, of course, if you have any questions about the certification or any of my other programs, please reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you and hop on a call. I love, love, love connecting with all of you. And I just want to thank everyone for some of the recent reviews that have come in of the podcast. Your support to me means so much. And I really just am forever grateful for all of you who've been listening to the show for, it's about to be 4 years in November, and for always just supporting me and being loyal audience members and community. And I wouldn't be here without you guys. So I really, truly appreciate it. And if you haven't left a review, then please leave a review on the podcast. I will give you a $250 credit to joining any new program in my world, either the Metamorphosis, the certification, any other programs that I run. You will have that credit. So I will leave it there. Please reach out with questions. I love you guys so much. Have an amazing weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to follow the show on Apple or Spotify, leave a review, and share the show with your friends who you know are yearning for this type of content. When you leave a review, send us a screenshot and we'll send you a $250 credit that you can apply to joining anything new in my world. You can stay connected with me by following me on Instagram at Elise_breathes. Make sure you download my clear trauma cheat sheet at EliseBreathes.com. See you next time.